Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I've got a really good feeling about the show this morning. We've got a lot to cover, and I've got a special treat. Later on, as you may be aware, yesterday, a former congressman, Joe Sempolinski, was sworn in to the Assembly, the New York State Assembly, and Assembly Minority Leader Will Barkley was kind enough to send us the audio from his swearing in and the speech that he gave, and we're going to play that along with a picture from the swearing in later on in the program. So we're looking forward to that. We'll hear what Joe had to say about the swearing in. I'll tell you some highlights of some upcoming interviews that we'll be having. First, and yes, we're going to kick off after we hear from viewers. We're going to kick off with Trump's press conference yesterday. Fueling the conversation that we've been having as of late about Greenland and Canada, etc. We'll be talking about that as well. But first, some comments from viewers after the program yesterday. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. $500 is a joke, and that's in reference, we talked about it with Governor Hochul, which I do have some New York State updates a little bit later on after we hear from Joe Sempolinski. But $500, Kathy Hochul has proposed to give the people. It's these various buy-offs for votes. The inflation rebate is what it's being called. Well, this viewer believes it's a joke. But open natural gas in New York, meaning fracking, that will help with inflation. I couldn't agree more. We had the conversation yesterday where it seems to me, unless I'm seriously misreading the room, that fracking is off the table when it comes to Governor Hochul, the same as when it was Governor Cuomo, Patterson being the first to ban it. And now I don't see any change in that anytime soon. A comment from a different viewer. $500 in New York City is like giving $700 to those victims of Helene. Insulting, disgusting, and then some didn't even qualify. Imagine that. That's a very good point. Thank you very much to those viewers, and we do have some New York State updates later on. But the breaking news first, the federal judge temporarily blocked the release of the Jack Smith report in regards to Trump's criminal case. Now, the key point here is temporarily. South Florida U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon, in an unsigned order, barred Attorney General Merrick Garland, Smith, meaning Jack Smith, or any Justice Department officials from publishing the comprehensive details about the federal prosecution of Trump. I have to believe, and I hope I'm wrong, but in today's world, this just seems so inevitable that it will be released, that it will be leaked to the media. And the reason I say that is if decisions by the Supreme Court can be leaked before they're announced, as with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I can't imagine this stays blocked for any real serious amount of time. Perhaps I'm wrong. But even if it is secretly released, the temporary block will only remain in effect until 3 days after the Atlanta-based U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit rules on whether Smith's appointment as special counsel was unconstitutional. Smith unsealed 2 indictments against the former president 2 years ago, first in southern Florida in June of 2023 for allegedly hoarding classified documents after leaving office, second in Washington, D.C. in August of 2023 for allegedly conspiring to overturn the 2020 election. Canada dismissed Smith's classified document case before the election last year, ruling that Smith had been improperly appointed by Garland without congressional approval. But 2 co-defendants, the president-elect's valet, Walt Duda, and an employee at his Palm Beach, Florida resort, Carlos D. Oliveira, remain on the docket. Their attorneys made an emergency appeal, in both the West Palm Beach division that Cannon oversees and to the federal appeals court to stop Smith from transmitting the report and Garland from releasing it. Trump's lawyers filed a friend of the court brief on Tuesday as well, arguing the release of Smith's final report would interfere in the soon-to-be 47th president's transition efforts. Though Smith has indicated he will resign before the president-elect takes office, his office is still seeking to try the valet and the what was it? I forget the other person's title already. The employee at his Palm Beach, Florida resort, valet Walt Nada and Carlos Oliveira, for allegedly conspiring with Trump to conceal sensitive intelligence files and other classified materials at his Mar-a-Lago estate. So, temporary block there. On the other side, Trump did lose his emergency bid to push off the January 10th sentencing in New York City's hush money case. I read a very interesting article by kind of a legal scholar yesterday. I didn't realize that technically, you know, we heard it so often in the election that Trump's a convicted felon, right? Convicted felon. And that was what we believe the whole lawfare, the whole goal was, so that he would have that label put on him. But I did not realize that you're not technically a convicted felon until sentencing. So it's this little weird legalese distinction. And so many are suggesting that this is being pushed now so that it is official that Trump would be a convicted felon as president of the United States. He did lose his second bid to delay his sentencing later this week in the Manhattan hush money case, and that's why they believe, again, it's being rushed. Not necessarily Trump's people, but this person that I was reading saying that they believe it's being rushed because they do want that conviction, that convicted felon label being official. A state appeals court judge swiftly swatted down a petition by Trump's attorney to push off the Friday sentencing while he fights a court decision upholding the verdict, finding him guilty of 34 felony counts. Judge Ellen Gesmer wrote, after consideration of the papers submitted and the extensive oral arguments, movement's application for an interim stay is denied. Gesmer issued the decision following 30 minutes of arguments from Trump's lawyers and prosecutors in the First Judicial Department Appellate Court in Manhattan. Lawyers for Trump had filed a colossal 502-page filing with the appellate department after trial judge Juan Merchan last week rejected an earlier bid to postpone the sentencing on presidential immunity grounds and kept the conviction intact. Merchan set the sentencing for January 10th, just 10 days before Trump's second inauguration as president, and said he planned to give Trump the most lenient sentence possible, no jail time, fine, or probation. He also gave Trump the option to appear virtually for the hearing. But again, and the reason for being that lenient, and I think this is a very good argument, is that because once the sentencing comes down, that convicted felon label is official. As of right now, yes, I know they threw it around a lot and used it a lot, but in the legal world, it is not really official until sentencing is handed down. Hence the reason why, well, don't worry, you're going to get the lenient sentence. It's going to be totally fine. But they then know that that label is, at that point, official. Now, I'm not going to go through everything that was said in these various hearings. That is just an update. As of now, Trump is to appear by video Friday at 9:30 a.m. for sentencing in Manhattan Supreme Court. Trump was convicted of 34 felonies to try to cover up what he doled out payoffs. You know all of that. Trump can't appeal to overturn the conviction until the sentencing is complete. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg had no comment on the ruling. As we see crime skyrocketing, I don't know if you saw those numbers yesterday in New York City. Isn't it good that Alvin Bragg's focused on the former president? He admitted that's what he was going to do when he ran. So it doesn't come as a surprise, but it's nonetheless frustrating, I'm sure, specifically for the residents of New York City. Now, during that press conference yesterday at Mar-a-Lago, first of all, I think it's overlooked that the press conference, because there was a lot of takeaways, but the press conference itself was held because it was, as I sat there waiting for it to begin, I think it was about 45 minutes late. But the reason the whole press conference was held, and we'll start it in this way with good news, that DAMAC Properties CEO Hussein Sawani announced a new $20 billion, $20 billion with a B, dollars investment in the United States. That's what kicked off the press conference. Notice that is being greatly overlooked. The investment, which will employ thousands of American workers, will build new data centers in Texas, Arizona, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, and Indiana. Now, this comes off of the heels of last month, SoftBank announcing a $100 billion investment over the next 4 years, promising 100,000 plus new jobs in artificial intelligence and related critical infrastructure. As the Trump transition team said, quote, "It's all part of President Trump's commitment to ushering in the golden age of America and American businesses." So, and then they finished by saying the best is yet to come. So that's what really kicked off the press conference. That's what the press conference was about. That is not the takeaways from the media. I'm going to start with one of my takeaways. Then we're going to take a look at what CNN had to say, and then just some of the, fun, may not be the right term, but the back and forth, whether it's regarding Greenland, whether it's regarding Canada. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, the Panama Canal coming in there as well. Your thoughts on Trump's push to purchase Greenland, his constant needling that he wants to make Canada the 51st state. I'd love to hear from you on that. As I mentioned, a very special segment of the program this morning. It's not very long, a couple minutes. We will be playing Assemblyman and former Congressman Joe Sempolinski's speech that he gave yesterday after his swearing in into the Assembly. We also have some updates on Congress. Quite a few things here about specifically the media. Biden administration, boy, I'm looking through all of this. There is a lot to cover. I'm going to ask a question. We'll dive into it a little bit deeper later on in the program. But according to NBC News, Donald Trump's White House is seeking to limit staffers who have direct access to the president. And they're almost presenting that in a negative way. I think that, I think there was a learning lesson in his last term of too many people around him with too much access. You had a lot of leakers. You had a lot of people claiming without really being able to back it up that I heard somebody say that they heard somebody say this and that and the other thing. So I see that as a positive. But your thoughts, should the Trump White House limit access to the president? Maybe making it more of a strict policy of who can speak with him, who can speak for him. So I thought that was an interesting note as we near January 20th. But we're just getting warmed up, folks, which we need on this cold, chilly morning. Stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Our beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you for joining us. So yesterday's press conference in Mar-a-Lago, people are talking about Greenland, about Canada. I really thought an important message, I'm not going to say it was the most important takeaway, but I thought a very important message that Trump sent is that he warned Hamas that all hell will break out if they don't release the hostages before he takes office. He did not elaborate on what that meant, which I also think is important and I also think is a positive. It is believed that Hamas has around 101 hostages still, including 7 Americans, at least 3 of whom are thought to be dead, and Trump has long threatened repercussions for the terror group if it fails to release them. He warned during the press conference, and I quote, "It will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say any more, but that's what it is." Now, Steve Witkoff, Trump's longtime friend and a pick for a special envoy to the Middle East, announced during the press conference that some progress has been made. Quote, "I believe we've been on the verge of it. I don't want to discuss sort of what's delayed it," he told reporters. He is poised to join negotiations over a hostage deal in Qatar on Wednesday. Trump hailed his special envoy to the Middle East pick as a great negotiator. "I don't want to hurt the negotiation. If the deal isn't done before I take office, which will be 2 weeks, all hell will break out in the Middle East," Trump said ominously. He also recounted his discussions with families whose loved ones remain in Hamas's captivity, as well as the terror group's savagery. So I know that's not really the major takeaway that some of the media have been focused on, but I think that's a very important message coming from the president-elect, and I was glad to see it. Now let's take a look at CNN, who we know is biased. against the president. They looked at their key lines from Trump's Mar-a-Lago news conference. And they talked, and I saw this yesterday. I thought about all of the comments and all the discussion we've been having lately about this topic. When Trump said, and I do understand why this is perhaps the biggest takeaway for many, which is the potential military action on Panama and Greenland. Asked directly whether he would rule out using military or economic coercion to see through his goal of gaining those territories, the president-elect responded, no. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. That is the Panama Canal and Greenland. He said, I'm talking about protecting the free world. I'm going to give you more kind of specific quotes on this. He did also during the press conference, this again, what CNN thought were the most important notes of the press conference, that he praised Cannon's decision, that is Judge Eileen Cannon, who we had just mentioned at the top of the hour, to block the public release of Special Counsel Jack Smith's final report. Quote, he was thrown off the case in disgrace. Why should he be allowed to write a fake report? It'll only be a fake report. That's great news, Trump said about Smith when asked about the decision by a reporter at Mar-a-Lago. I think this is interesting that CNN focused on the fact that he criticized Carter when they weren't as upset that Biden used Carter's death to criticize Trump. But what Trump said during the press conference is the Panama Canal is a disgrace. What took place at the Panama Canal? Jimmy Carter gave it to them for $1, and they were supposed to treat us well. I thought it was a terrible thing to do. That's just more or less stating the fact of what happened. I think Trump released a very gracious and very nice statement after Carter passed away. That, to me, is just stating the historic nature of what happened. Quote, Jimmy Carter gave it to them for $1, and they were supposed to treat us well. That is not attacking Carter, but I don't even know if you could say it's criticizing the deal Carter made. I don't know if it's, quote, criticizing Carter as the way CNN put it. The other one that people like, and I want to hear your opinion on it as well. Love it or hate it. That it should know, well, I'll quote Trump. Why am I paraphrasing? Quote, we're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring. That covers a lot of territory, the Gulf of America. What a beautiful name, and it's appropriate. As soon as he made that statement, you got to give her credit here. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene announced that she'll be introducing legislation to change the name mere moments after President-elect said it at his news conference. President-elect Trump said it at his news conference. So it does have a nice ring to it. Gulf of America. Your thoughts on that as well? He blasted Biden over the transition. He said the Biden administration, quote, is trying everything they can to make it more difficult and is seeking to block the reforms of the American people and what they voted for. He does raise a good point, whether it's the executive action to ban future offshore oil and gas development, even some of the, if you want to really get down to the nitty gritty, even when he commuted those sentences of the 37 people on death row, everything has been done that made it easier for some illegal aliens and all that. We've brought this up really since Harris lost the election, of the things that Biden's doing to gum up the works, to be the fly in the ointment. So I would have to say that Trump is not wrong there, and I don't think really at this point the Biden administration is even trying to hide that. Trump continued, they say we're going to have a smooth transition. All they do is talk. It's all talk. Everything they do is talk. We're going to have a smooth transition. And then they take 625 million acres and they essentially landmark it so you can't ever drill there again. Well, we're going to be drilling soon. He raged against windmills, dripping showers, and electric heaters. That's a non-biased way CNN puts it. His latest comments came as part of extended criticism of environmental and energy efficiency, complaining about dripping showers, low water dishwashers, and electric heaters. On Tuesday, he blamed windmills for a sharp increase in whale fatalities across southern New England's coastlines in recent weeks. He said windmills litter our country and compared them to dropping garbage in a field. He said they are the most expensive energy ever and that only those who build them with subsidies want them. we're going to try to have a policy where no windmills are being built. He also mentioned, and I'm not sure if I have an opportunity to talk too much about this morning, but it's worth mentioning during his press conference, Trump said he thought Meta, Facebook, has come a long way after Mark Zuckerberg announced yesterday that it would get rid of fact checkers on Facebook and Instagram and replace them with user-generated community notes. Quote, I watched their news conference and I thought it was a very good news conference. I think they've come a long way. Meta, Facebook, I think they've come a long way. I watched it. The man was very impressive. Now, this comes after Zuckerberg he seems to be wanting to kind of cozy up a little bit to Trump, the Trump administration. He donated $1 million, which in the scheme of things is nothing essentially to him, but $1 million to Trump's inauguration. There is still a lot of criticism from conservatives, even though they are going more towards free speech, getting away from that bias and really taking a dig at Gavin Newsom because they're moving headquarters from California to Texas, saying that they don't think they'll get as much bias there kind of idea. But there are still some conservatives that are critical because they say, well, what about the damage that's already been done? And I think that is a fair point. And then buried at the very end of the article was that amazing, the whole reason what the press conference was about, that the billionaire Hussein Sazwani will invest at least $20 billion, $20 billion for data centers across the United States. So there you are. We've got more to talk about on this when it comes to Canada. What do you think of the Gulf of America? And your thoughts about this push for Canada, push for Greenland. As I mentioned, we'll be talking about New York State issues a little bit later on because Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay was kind enough to send me the audio of Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski being sworn in the little speech that he gave yesterday. So we'll be playing that later on in the program. Stay with us. We got to take a break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. A couple comments from viewers. Gulf of America sounds good, but will we own it? I'm not sure how that works water-wise. I don't have the answer to that, but I do know it's a very important when it comes to drilling and like that, statistically for the United States, because the United States has, I believe, more of it. I was going to try to look it up, but I believe it is more of America is on it. Yeah, here we go. The Gulf is bordered by the United States to the north, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, 6 Mexican states to the west, and the island of Cuba to the southeast. So there you go. That's a quick search from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, if you're curious. Thank you for that comment. Another comment. Excuse me. I think fixing America's United States is job one for now. But if there's a threat that another country could take Canada, then yes, we should join with them if it makes economical and political sense. Otherwise, I think it's too soon to create more issues for us. Let's clean up the mess for the states first. That's a fair point. It certainly wouldn't be a good idea if a country like China somehow stepped in and acquired Canada. Perhaps Mexico. Let me stop there. I think, and I'm going to get to this a little bit, Greenland, that's one of the reasons why people believe that Trump is so interested in Greenland, because the strategic nature of it. And we'll talk about that. So thank you. That's more Greenland. Canada, I just think Canada almost is him teasing. Anyway, perhaps Mexico should be the 52nd state. Since a lot of their people are already here, that may make more sense. And then saying they're going to convert the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America kind of sounds like it's on their minds. Well, good point. Thank you. Comment. Oh, here's a comment. How about this? The Trump administration has enough to worry about here rather than trying to expand into new territories right now, unless it's going to help us somehow fix us first. Fair point. Here we go. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning. Well, good morning. Regarding the new name for the Gulf, our coastline is far longer than Mexico, so I think it makes sense and agree with a change. There we go. Thank you for that. That's what I was trying to say in a roundabout way when I first came back from break. I don't see a problem with that. I think it'll take a little getting used to. I thought it was a really interesting... That's what's kind of fascinating about Trump. Just when you think you know what the topic of the day is going to be, something comes out of, we're going to say right field. We're not going to call it left field. Right field that throws you for a loop. I did not see a conversation about the Gulf of America being a topic for today, even after the press conference. But I think that's what's fascinating about Trump, because so many politicians stay on message at every single press conference, every single speech, every single rally. Harris did it. Biden did it. Republican, George W. Bush. I mean, it's a politician normally says, these are my 3 or 4 topics. And you can expect the economy, maybe border, blah, blah, blah. In this case, out of nowhere, we're going to start calling it the Gulf of America. Anyway, Trump says Canada will face very serious tariffs. He made the comments at that press conference. That's along with the Gulf of Mexico changing to the Gulf of America. Mexico has to stop allowing millions of people to pour into our country. They can stop them, and we're going to put very serious tariffs on Mexico and Canada because Canada, they come through Canada too, and the drugs that are coming through are at record numbers. Trump has threatened 25% tariffs against Canada and Mexico in the past. Some observers speculated that he was making the threat as a bargaining tactic, and the leaders of both countries quickly pledged to work with the incoming commander-in-chief. He also jokingly suggested, and that's why I do believe the Canada issue is more of a joke, that Canada become the 51st state, while more seriously pressing for the U.S. to acquire Greenland from Denmark and suggesting the U.S. may need to reassert control of the Panama Canal Zone. So with Canada, I do think that's more of just kind of a teasing. And, some are saying that it's really Trump that caused the end of Justin Trudeau. They said winning the 2024 election, this is Daniel McCarthy, was only the beginning. The Trump effect is now sweeping the globe. From Canada to Europe, left liberal governments are tottering, while right-leaning voters, especially young men, gravitate toward populist politics and take inspiration from Donald Trump's success in America. It's almost as if Trump himself were on the ballot in other advanced democracies. So the downfall of Justin Trudeau coming from the election of Trump. And now we know right after Trump was elected, Trudeau met with him to talk about these tariffs. If some Trump-like future leader in Britain or Europe can do likewise, like Trump did, the result could be a generational realignment similar to the one America has seen. Until then, though, Trump himself will continue to be the leader of a transformation that is remaking more than just American politics, and which is now unmade Justin Trudeau's premiership. But the Canada officials have responded to Trump's proposal to make Canada the 51st state. And when it says proposal, it's been more or less teasing Trudeau, calling him the governor, or suggesting that Wayne Gretzky be drafted to run for prime minister and then called him governor. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, remember his brother? That was a wild ride. Countered President-elect Donald Trump's proposal to make Canada the 51st state of the union. So again, Doug Ford offering to purchase 2 American states. At a press conference Monday, the senior Canadian official got testy when a reporter asked him if he thought Trump was serious with his talks of the United States taking control of Canada. Ford said, quote, "To the president, I will make him a counteroffer. How about if we buy Alaska and we'll throw in Minnesota and Minneapolis at the same time? And we'll throw in, how does that mean? It's not realistic. I know he likes making these comments and he likes joking around. I take that seriously. He may be joking, but under my watch, that will never, ever happen." Last month, Ford threatened to cut power to over 1 million Americans and ban American-made beer over Trump's 25% tariff proposal. I mentioned, and if you don't remember, he's since passed, but it was really a very interesting news cycle when his brother, Rob Ford, was the Toronto mayor. I'm telling you. Now, Justin Trudeau offered a similar message to Trump yesterday, saying there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Workers and communities in both our countries benefit from being each other's biggest trading and security partners. Again, I'm not sure. Do you think this is serious? I think it's more Trump having a little fun. I do believe that Greenland and Panama are a more serious issue. That's why he did not take off the table economic type sanctions and also armed ways of taking Greenland. Trump, they're saying, is trolling Canada, but if Canada becomes the 51st state, it could boost Democrats because Canada is a blue state behemoth. Canada and the United States, that would be something, Trump said at that press conference. They should be a state. But if you look at the math, yes, Trudeau was elected. It is going a little more conservative. But hypothetically, according to Paul Steinhauser, it could be a massive political boon for Democrats at the expense of Republicans. Canada's modern political history points to the left. Quote, the Liberals have been in charge of the Canadian federal government for the majority of the time since World War II. It is likely voters supporting those governments would vote for Democrats rather than Republicans if Canada became the 51st state. So that is an answer to a viewer quite some time ago that asked if they were Republican. I know they're leaning more conservative than they did, but still a long way to go. When we come back, we're going to talk about Greenland and Panama. I'm asking you to stay with us probably in the 7 o'clock hour. We are going to hear from former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. And when I say hear from, Will Barclay was kind enough to send me the audio of Joe being sworn in. I'm going to play that for you and hear his speech as he takes the oath of office and hear what he had to say. So thank you to Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay. We're also going to be talking about some things about the Biden administration, the incoming Trump administration on top of this press conference yesterday. And I see a lot more comments coming in. Keep them coming in, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horsets. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Now listen to this. You see the beautiful view. It's been fixed thanks to the hard work, the diligent work of Chris and Brian. And not only were they kind enough to get us the exact view that we want, Chris just sent us in a wave. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for the wave. We'll add it right now. All right, some comments from viewers as we welcome you back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. All right, I think Canada has too many liberals, says one viewer. If it became a state, we could name it North California. Well, the name, I like the name. Yes, that seems to be the common refrain, and that's why I don't think that part of this conversation is serious coming from Trump. I think it has really been to tease Justin Trudeau, kind of knock him down a peg. And then, of course, that worked because he's not the prime minister, or he's outgoing prime minister. So, yes, I would kind of step aside from that. It's fun for us to talk about. I don't think there's really much oomph behind it. Okay, next, but you never know with Trump. So I might be eating crow tomorrow. Comment from a different viewer. I disagree with making Mexico a state because of the large presence and influence of the cartels, which I perceive could possibly lead to a civil war, at the very least, unrest. Thank you for that. That's a very good point. I do want to clarify, I don't think Trump has said anything about making Mexico a state. I think you're referencing, right? I'm not putting words in your mouth. Referencing a different viewer's comment that Mexico should become a state. So yes, I understand. I just want to clarify that if someone's just tuning in. We've had a lot of interesting discussions from what Trump said yesterday. That was not one of them, though. So Trump said he won't rule out using military force to acquire Greenland or the Panama Canal. That is, I think you could argue, the most important takeaway. I like what he said about Hamas, but this is sending a signal. We need them for economic security. It might be that you have to do something, said the incoming president. He's spoken out about his desire to get Greenland and the Panama Canal under U.S. rule since his election win. But Tuesday marked the first time Trump had mused about using American forces to do so. Quote, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. Give it up. And so what they said, well, I could probably read this whole piece. I'm not going to, though, but there's a really fascinating, I don't want to call it an expose. I think that word is thrown around too much, but it's an exclusive from the New York Post. And it asks the question, why does Donald Trump want Greenland? And why he's sending this strong, deliberate message? Well, that strong, deliberate message is to China. The ice-covered Danish territory The largest island in the world has long been a hot topic among strategists in Washington and elsewhere. Despite Copenhagen's insistence, it is not for sale. Why is it so important? It's its location along vital shipping routes and the presence of key raw materials that are rarely found anywhere else. Also, as Trump said, or Trump's transition team said, it quotes, sending a strong, deliberate message to Beijing, not just talk, action, making America ambitious again. The U.S. is currently locked in a three-cornered fight with China as well as Russia over the Arctic region's natural resources, such as lithium, cobalt, and graphite. Quote, there are two main reasons to annex Greenland. The first is the large deposit of rare earth elements needed for critical defense and electronic manufacturing, said Atlantic Council non-resident fellow Alex Plittis. Second, Greenland has a legitimately large claim to the Arctic, and that would provide the U.S. with a strong position as competition there heats up for navigation and resources. The U.S. has been in quiet contests with China and Russia over access to the Arctic for years, deploying military icebreaker ships to the region on missions to explore the resource-rich frozen tundra. So just kind of, it's a bigger picture. I know we're having fun with it, but it is a clear, deliberate message to China. Trump argued that China and Russia's ships have been passing around Greenland, which is currently ruled by Denmark, adding that, quote, we're not letting that happen. Whoop, stepping up all my paperwork here. And by the way, just to add fuel to the fire, you saw that Don Jr., how am I doing time? Don Jr. was visiting Greenland, and Trump tweeted out, make Greenland great again, or whatever the case. I can't remember the exact quote. He also talked about the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China, he said, arguing Panama abused the gift of the canal by giving it to Beijing. He said Panama wants $3 billion to help fix the canal, but argued that they should ask China, which is, quote, at both ends of the canal. Now, back to Greenland for a moment, and we can talk more about Panama. But the Danish Prime Minister had a blunt message for Trump. Greenland is not for sale. Wow, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to say her name. Danish Prime Minister Mette? That's not the tough one, folks. Mette Frederiksen. Oh, that's not as bad, I guess. It looks a lot worse. She reportedly told a Danish television station to, quote, we need to stay calm and stick to our principles, saying that Greenland is not for sale. All right, there you go. Greenland's not for sale, but Trump did not rule out using military force to acquire it. Of all people, well, okay, we're not going to stop talking about this, but we are nearly done with this conversation. In the next hour, we still have time in this hour, don't get me wrong, but in the next hour, we are going to hear from Assemblyman, that's going to be weird to say, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski, former congressman, current chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee. We're not going to hear, he's not coming in the studio, but Minority Leader Will Barclay was kind enough to send me the audio from his swearing in. We're going to play that along with a picture from his oath of office and tell you a little bit about what he had to say, what Will Barclay had to say, and a couple other New York State issues. Hopefully we get a chance to talk about the Laken Act, which Congress passed yesterday. Also a few things here about Trump, about Biden. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I hear that courting whistle. We got to take our break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again to Boss Security for bringing us the Frankly Speaking roof cam. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Hey, look at this. Perhaps the first time in Frankly Speaking history, we have two Wyoming native waves. Thank you very much for the waves. Keep them coming in. Comment from a viewer. There is a deeper reason why Trump wants Canada and Panama. Trump doesn't like China. And China is deeply involved in both countries. Well, then we tied in with Greenland as well. The strategic reason for Greenland, it's some people look at this conversation and think it's just kind of funny. I think yesterday's press conference perhaps changed that when he said he would not rule out using military force, because that proved to a lot of people that this isn't just Trump stirring up the news cycle, that there is a strategic reason for this. there are important reasons, and even John Fetterman, Senator John Fetterman, who is, well, we had that piece a while ago, and I keep quoting it, and it didn't seem to get as much traction as I thought it would, but I thought it was a very good point, which is there's two Democrat parties, essentially. One is the party of the Fettermans, and the one is the party of the AOCs. Now, the AOC, the far left, Fetterman, left, but also at times reasonable. He's been very, very pro-Israel, which is refreshing coming from the Democrat Party. He has said that he will work with Trump. He doesn't want to see Trump fail, and that he wants to at least give his cabinet nominees the opportunity. He's not just going to say no. He wants to hear from them. Well, John Fetterman described the recent talks about the United States acquiring Greenland as being, quote, a reasonable, let me try that again, a responsible conversation. During an interview on Fox News, Senator Fetterman admitted that while he would never support taking Greenland by force, it would be a responsible conversation to talk about acquiring Greenland from Denmark, including buying it outright. There's a lot of talk about Greenland, for example, and I know there's a lot of freakouts, and of course, I would never support taking it by force. But I do think it is a responsible conversation if they were open to acquiring it, whether just buying it outright. He said to people who think the idea of the U.S. acquiring Greenland is bonkers that under former President Thomas Jefferson, the U.S. had made the Louisiana Purchase, and under former President Andrew Johnson, the U.S. bought Alaska. If anyone thinks that's bonkers, it's like, well, remember the Louisiana Purchase? I think Alaska was a pretty great deal, too. $50 million, I think it was. It was referred to as Seward's Folly. Wasn't Seward from Auburn, New York, not that far from here? The reason I asked that, years ago, Sarah Palin, remember Sarah Palin? She was in town, still Alaska governor, and she came to Auburn because of a celebration of Seward. So he must have been, let's say, some random celebration of him. Anyway, enough on that. That was a weird side note. I think I've got to agree, and I don't always agree with Senator Fetterman, Democrat from Pennsylvania, but it is a responsible conversation to have. Now, Maggie Haberman on CNN, specifically Anderson Cooper 360, said, especially on Greenland, these things are not all the same. Panama is a relatively new focus of his. On Greenland, not only has he been talking about it for quite some time, but a lot of people have been talking about it for some time. This idea of acquiring Greenland for strategic purposes has happened, for decades. A close friend of Trump suggested it to him in his first term, Ron Lauder. It has never totally gone away, but Trump is clearly in an expansionist mindset. He also keeps talking about Canada as a 51st state that is clearly much more of a troll and sort of a dominance play. But in terms of Trump talking about military action, or at least not ruling it out, that caught a lot of people by surprise. It's not clear if that's actually something he's thinking about or something he said, because he was quite visibly in a pretty good mood, or pretty bad mood, during this press conference. I think primarily because of the legal challenges that he's facing this week in the New York criminal case, and with the possibility of the Jack Smith report and the documents of the federal case getting released. So what that looks like is he gets into office, remains to be seen, but it's not a surprise that Trump, at least in his language, has never been especially respectful of sovereign borders. We'll see what that looks like in actual practice. So he's in an expansionist mindset. Again, I don't believe Canada is a serious conversation, but I do believe Greenland, and he made that crystal clear yesterday, Greenland and Panama Canal very much at the top of his mind. How am I doing? Okay. Representative Sarah McBride from Delaware, Democrat from Delaware, was on the Situation Room. And Wolf Blitzer asked her, Trump also says he's open to using the U.S. military to potentially seize the Panama Canal and Greenland. You get the point, right? McBride said, quote, this is typical bluster from the president-elect. This obsession with Greenland and Panama really come out of nowhere and has been filled with mistruths and misunderstandings. So this shows a little bit of the lack of knowledge by Representative Sarah McBride, because he has talked about Greenland for a while. I will say Panama Canal has become a more recent topic, but this is Trump. He's looking for ways to put America first, right? So to suggest that this really came out of nowhere, I would say certain comments like the Gulf of America perhaps came out of nowhere. which is really kind of fun. But no, this idea of Greenland, that's not new. And I'm not sure what the mistruths and misunderstandings are that she references. But see, it's very easy for politicians or these political analysts to say, well, he lied, or they're half-truths or mistruths, and then not back that up. Now I have to give you specifics. And that's one of the problems with the fact-checking. The fact-checking has been wrong so often, so many times. Many times the fact-checkers needing to be fact-checked. So what are these mistruths and misinformation? But I continue. She says, I don't understand why this president is so committed at a time of global instability, of fostering more instability globally, of undermining our allies. Doesn't bother them when Biden did it for 4 years. But anyway, at the same time, diverting the attention of our federal government toward issues like invading Greenland or Panama. While we should be focused on bringing down costs facing workers, retirees, and families here in the country. That's what our focus should be on. I thought before November 5th, I thought costs didn't need to be brought down. What changed? Why now all of a sudden is everybody admitting that the infrastructure is hurting so many workers? Is it because Democrats were sending a crystal clear message that the American working class no longer supports them? And now they're worried about you, not mocking you when you, well, they still are doing that, but mocking you when you say you can't put food on the table or you can't pay your bills, and they would mock you and ridicule you. But just to wrap up with what Representative McBride said, if the president is serious about America First agenda, he should be focused on domestic economic issues, not some weird obsession. Oh, going to go back to weird. Okay. Good to see you did some soul searching with invading Greenland or Panama. One last thing on this as we wrap up our number one. Oh, so many comments coming in. All right, we got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. We've got a couple comments here. Let's see, where is it? There it is. Trump needs to focus on lowering groceries, gas, heating, and electric, but definitely groceries and gas. Forget Greenland and Panama. You know, that seems to be somewhat of a common trend. We've had quite a few viewers comment this morning that let's focus on the United States first. Well, America first, right? But let's focus on that first. I understand the strategy behind Greenland and Panama, but I understand what is being said here. Let's focus on getting the economy back. Let's focus on bringing peace and prosperity today, and then maybe look at that in the near future. But thank you for that comment, and keep those comments coming in. One last thing on the topic. John King said Tuesday, CNN host John King, that it was remarkable, and I wonder if this was your takeaway from the press conference, that Donald Trump was so whiny and so full of grievances. Quote, it is remarkable, somebody who is 2 weeks from resuming the presidency of the United States, who, whether you voted for him or not, whether you like him or not, just engineered a remarkable historical political comeback, is so whiny and so full of grievances. Now, that is Donald Trump's trademark. That has been his trademark since he came down that escalator. He used his grievance to keep his people together, to keep his base together, and to keep his team loyal. He won the popular vote. He should be celebrating. He should be coming into Washington. Yes, he has very narrow majorities in the House of the Senate. It's going to be difficult to get things done. But this should be someone who is upbeat and happy to come in. But he is still full of grievances because it is his organizing principle. Is that what you take it as grievances? When he sees America getting hurt in some way, or when he talked about Hamas releasing the hostages, I don't see it as grievances. I see it very much as telling the world, not just the country, how he is going to govern, what his focuses are going to be. So I think that is a very, we'll say, unique way of putting it from CNN's John King. We're going to have some media updates a little bit later on. Stay with us, though. Hour number one in the books. Hour number two, mere moments away. We'll be right back. Hour number two of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you so much for joining us. this morning. We've had a great discussion about Greenland, about Panama Canal, Canada. We are going to get away from that now, though we do have some comments that we're going to read, and you can continue to comment on it. Please do. I love these discussions. We're just running out of material on that. We're going to move along because there's a lot of other breaking news stories to cover. A couple bit of housekeeping notes. Coming up on tomorrow's program, we're going to be talking with Christine Towner. And she's going to tell us about the Senior Companion Program. This is a great opportunity for you to volunteer, to become a companion for someone that wants to remain in their home, to help them. There's stipends involved. She's going to join us on tomorrow's broadcast. On Friday's broadcast, I'm really looking forward to this. We haven't talked to her in a little while, but that is chairperson for the Steuben County Legislature, Kelly Fitzpatrick. She's going to give us a look at her first year as chair, what is new, what there is to discuss, what we need to look forward to in the upcoming year, how her first year was, what she's learned. We've got a lot of questions. So if you have any questions for Chair Kelly Fitzpatrick, I would love to hear from you. All right, let's go to some viewer comments. When we're done with viewer comments, we are going to hear from Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. I'm going to play you a clip from his oath of office. But before that, comments from viewers. Gulf of America and Made in America is what I would like to see. I agree. Do you like Gulf of America? Not you specifically. I know you like Gulf of America. You just said it. But to those watching who have not weighed in, what are your thoughts of calling it the Gulf of America? Comment from a different viewer. I did a few minutes of research and found that China has been aggressively pursuing interests in the Arctic for decades, including declaring themselves a near-Arctic state in 2018. Acquiring Greenland is a strategic move as global warming opens up sea lanes. I, for one, am not laughing anymore. And you raise a good point. Once military intervention was not ruled out, it was no longer us having kind of a laugh about it or taking it lightly. It is a strategic, it is a very important strategic move. And that's why John Fetterman, Democrat, senator, saying that it's a responsible conversation to have, not the military force, but to acquire Greenland. So thank you for that comment. Comment from a different viewer. Trump needs to focus on increasing Social Security monthly payments. We are suffering. They've been talking about it for three and three quarters years, and I'm sick of it. They gave over $270 billion to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, plus more military. Well, anyway, they got a little autocorrect here. And more military, more money, millions more. Where is our help? And to be clear, this viewer says, I am a Trumper. I love him as a businessman and now as our president. So just wanted you to understand I'm not a liberal. I understand. We have numerous times when people will write in this program and talk about the need to increase Social Security. So I totally understand. And I understand your frustration as we've seen so much spending. And it seems like who's the ones that aren't getting the help are the ones that need the help. And I don't mean help. Social Security, you paid for it. But I'm just saying that need, as inflation goes up, need to put food on their table. So I understand your frustration. No doubt. And I understand why there's so many people that have commented this morning that are Trump supporters saying, hey, neat, Greenland, Panama, Canada, Gulf of America, all neat, fine. But let's focus right now, at least maybe the first year, on the United States, us in the United States who need help with groceries, gas, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski, former congressman, friend of Frankly Speaking. As a matter of fact, some would say a fan favorite to the point where it's starting to get me mad. No, I'm just kidding. He was, I should say, yesterday, sworn in as representative of the 148th Assembly District. His wife Angie and daughters Jojo and Maddie attended the ceremony along with other friends and family members. He said it's an honor and the privilege of a lifetime to represent the people of Cattaraugus, Allegheny, and Steuben counties in Albany. I can promise that I will never stop fighting for the people of the 148th District and will work to make New York a safer, more affordable place to live and raise a family for them. My priorities are to protect our inherent constitutional rights, cut wasteful government spending, and reject any proposal that prioritizes criminals over crime victims. Ooh, that's an important message. Now, I don't want to read any more of what he had to say because we're going to play the clip that Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay sent me from Assemblyman Sempolinski's speech. Full disclosure, I should do this. I haven't done this in a while. Full disclosure, I did work for then Congressman Joe Sempolinski as his communications director when he was in Washington, when he was in Congress. So, but now he is not specifically my assembly person, but many people watching in today, your assembly person. We're going to book him on the show because I actually booked, I'm glad this gave me an opportunity. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano will join us on the 17th. I think it is, yes, 17th, because we're going to talk about the state of the state, budget, et cetera, et cetera. And then we are going to book Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski to come in on the program and tell us about how he likes Albany, and then just have our normal conversations about current politics, local politics, because he is also the chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee. So Leader Barclay swore in, or I guess welcomed is probably a better word, 6 new members. Quote, "It's an exciting time to return to Albany as we welcome our newest members to the Assembly Minority Conference. Each individual has a proven track record of hard work, professionalism, and a deep love and respect for this great state. While much work is ahead, I'm confident these new members will be instrumental in achieving great things for their district and for our conference. We're eager and united in our commitment to tackling the state's most pressing issues and building a brighter future for New York." Joe Sempolinski, of course, one of those members, saying in regards to what Leader Barclay said, "I'm incredibly thankful to be here today with the support of the 148th District." You know what? Hold on. Why don't we hear from Joe specifically? How's that? All right, so here we go. We're going to give this a shot. It is only audio, but we want to hear from Joe on his swearing in and his oath of office yesterday. So here, and I kind of even made it a little bit fancy, if you will. Here we go. Here is now Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski.
Left hand on the Bible, Joe. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
And I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Member of Assembly
and will faithfully discharge the duties of office of Member of the Assembly
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations. Good job. Good job. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Leader, and I'm so pleased to be joining this team. All of the members of the conference, thank you, Leader, for all your support. I'm looking forward to working with the 2 senators that overlap with the district. I know Mr. Borrello was here. There he is. Mr. O'Mara has also part of the district, so I'm looking forward to working with them. And I also want to thank Assemblyman Giglio for his 19 years of service to the 148th District. It was an honor working for him, and he taught me hopefully how to do the job right and with honor. I want to thank my family. My parents are here, so thank you for everything that you've given me. My mother-in-law is here, who's always treated me like family, so thank you for coming. My wife, we've been on a lot of weird twists and turns the last 3.5 years, as was mentioned. Some unusual resume trajectory, but thank you for bearing with through all of that. My 2 daughters, Maddie helps me keep things in perspective. She's 5, so she vaguely understands what was going on, and her birthday, turning 5, was 2 days after the election. And she sat me down the weekend before the election. She said, "Daddy, I know your meeting is on Tuesday, but remember my birthday is on Thursday." So she's got her head screwed on straight. My older daughter, JoJo, she's got Down syndrome, and she is my personal hero. So I'm real happy that you're here. I know we're on live stream, so I want to also say to the people of the 148th Assembly District, I know that's a part of the state that often feels very removed from Albany. And your voice is heard, and your cares and your dreams and your concerns are just as valid as every other part of the state. And it is an honor to be your voice. So thank you.
Great job from now Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. So congratulations to Joe Sempolinski. We'll have him back on the program here very soon. He did finish up. By the way, I should have mentioned it in that photo. State Supreme Court Justice Raymond W. Walter was administering the oath of office as Assemblyman Sempolinski's wife, Angie, held the Bible and his family looked on. Joe finished up by saying, I'm incredibly thankful to be here today with the support of the people of the 148th District and in partnership with my conference as we begin the important work of setting New York back on the right path. Our constitutional rights are continuously challenged. Our government has continued to spend excessively, and we've lost focus on who we should be delivering for, which are New Yorkers. We must be ready to return to common sense policies that will enrich New York taxpayers, not ask them to continually foot the bill for initiatives and programs that don't deliver on what they promise. I'm ready to fight for New York State and New Yorkers this year, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to do so. So thank you to Joe. Congratulations, Joe. I know many of you send the same message congratulating Joe, and I'll pass those along for you. Now, jokingly and not so jokingly, many of you have reached out and said you want to see Joe or Phil Palmisano run for governor. Well, Michael Goodwin, and they both, if you recall, they both said the other one would make a better candidate. Having a little fun with that, but always appreciate those comments. But Michael Goodwin at the New York Post says that Kathy Hochul's sham of a campaign is off and running. Yes, she is up for re-election in 2026. Now, in case you missed it, this is still 2025. But 2026, and it's already off and running. But it's also clear, as Michael Goodwin said, that she does not have a clue how to fix New York. Nearly 2 years before she stands for re-election, New York governor, Democratic governor, Kathy Hochul is already running hard. To judge from her press releases, social media, and public comments, Hochul wants voters to believe she will keep them safe from both crime and poverty. To underscore her pitch, she uses variations of her favorite catchphrases repeatedly. Quote, I promise to put money in your pockets, she says over and over. And this one, quote, public safety is my top priority, and I'll do everything in my power to keep New Yorkers safe. They are the right goals, but the mystery is why Hochul doesn't honestly fight to achieve them. Yes, she's been very misleading, very dishonest when it comes to public safety. She will tell you she's all for public safety, and then we see issues like raise the age or bail reform, keeping bail reform on the books, et cetera, et cetera. Very, what's the word I want to look for? Anti, maybe? Public safety, but presenting her policies as public safety. Look at, for instance, she took a photo on the subway saying how safe they were. That was the same day where that person burnt someone to death on the subway. Continuing, though, talking is easy, but why not actually do something to make them happen? In fact, under her tenure, New York is going backwards. It is constantly taking more and more money out of people's pockets. And Michael Goodwin isn't telling us anything that we don't already know. And far from feeling safe. Most New Yorkers worry every day about sky-high crime and violence, and in New York City, specifically on the subway. And I do have to add, a lot of times, especially from the New York Post, it's New York City-centric. But folks, bail reform and these type of policies that tie the hands of the police and coddle criminals, it's reaching our, I'm not even going to say it's reaching our area. It is in our area. How many times have we talked with Sheriff Allard or Sheriff Schramm or whoever the case may be, talking about victims that did not need to be victims, criminals that continue to not even game the system. It is the system to commit more and more crimes, and unfortunately, violent crimes, domestic abuse, these type of things. But we'll continue. Because unfortunately, nearly everyone that you talk to, and I'm sure many that are watching this program right now, have unfortunately had some type of dealing with this increased crime. But as always, they continue to tell us, never mind what you're seeing and experiencing. We've got the statistic that we want to show you. Anyway. The big picture is the state continues to fall further behind successful dynamic states in both the cost and quality of life. It turns out that being America's tax capital and treating perps and raving maniacs with kids' gloves is not a formula for keeping residents happy. Who would have guessed? In some ways, the current crisis recalls Hochul's brush with political death in her 2022 campaign. She acted as if crime wasn't a big deal, letting Lee Zeldin pound away on the topic day after day. Now, we're going to continue here. I just looked at my time. I ran late. I forgot that speech with Joe, and I want to tie it in because he is in the assembly, tie it in with the governor's race, but we're going to continue. That's not the end of the Hochul discussion, but then we are going to get on to Congress. We're going to get on to the White House, all that much more. Your thoughts, again, on the Gulf of America, your purchase or whatever of Greenland, of Panama, maybe even Canada, any topic you'd like to discuss. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Wow, getting a lot of waves this morning. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Here we go. A comment from a viewer. Well, if we are making foreign countries states, make New York City a state. We have been supporting it far too long. Fair point. And there's another wave. Thank you very much. Okay, back to what we were saying about Hochul, because her campaign has hit the ground running, even though it's almost 2 years away. And as Michael Goodwin is saying in the Post, she pretends as if she is concerned about public safety, though she isn't. If you look at how bad and disastrous, yes, she won, but her last campaign was, as Lee Zeldin just kept talking about public safety. And he did so good as she was focused on, I think at that point she was running on abortion, I want to say. Although Hochul ultimately prevailed, then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi scolded her for ignoring the crime problem, saying it helped the GOP flip enough seats in New York to turn the House red. And we've talked about this numerous times, that it was Lee Zeldin who flipped the House essentially because of how effectively he campaigned. It emerged later that Hochul had relied on the advice of a political aide who actually lived full-time in Colorado. Do you remember that? We don't need to talk about all that. But the aide was dispatched after it turned out he was repeatedly accused of being a bully, which made him a perfect scapegoat for her dismal performance. But Hochul is still not forcefully attacking the two issues driving people out of the state. So unless she could find someone else to blame, a second failure will be all hers. The core problem is that the astronomical taxes and fees needed to support Albany's reckless spending inevitably push the cost of living higher and higher. Yet while Hochul belatedly bemoans the situation, she adds more and more costs to both families and private businesses. New fees on landlords and employers took effect last week, and Hochul personally led the way for the congestion tax, the destructive congestion tax. She also pulled a bait and switch by pausing the tax in June, just weeks before it was to begin. Her decision came after meeting with Pelosi's successor, that's Hakeem Jeffries. Clearly, the pause was a political ploy designed to protect the party's suburban candidates and avoid a repeat of the GOP gains in 2022. Well, once the results were in, Hochul rolled out a new scheme that imposed a $9 daily tax on cars, telling insiders she wanted to do it before Trump became president and stopped it. Because the fee initially was set at $15, she claimed she had achieved a 40% reduction that would save motorists $1,500 a year. Think about that. Thank you. You've never had to pay this before, but now you have to pay. But it's just not as much as we originally said you were going to have to pay. I guess she's looking for a pat on the back there. Also, I would add, at a time when we are struggling in New York, is it the best move for your governor the day after the election to come out and essentially say we don't want Donald Trump anywhere in New York? Is that the best decision? Her and Tish James having that press conference. So by her wacky math with that congestion pricing, she looks at that as counting that you can count on putting money in your pocket. So we were going to charge you. This is a very government tactic too, by the way. So take note of it if you aren't already aware. We're going to charge you $15, and everybody's outraged. $15 a day? I can't afford that. Well, listen, we crunched the numbers. It's only going to be $9 a day. Oh, well, thank you. That's wonderful. We save so much money. Wait a minute. We were never paying 15 or 9 before. So it's not a savings. It's a tax. It's a tax we didn't pay before. You see it very often with maybe school budgets in the area where they'll say, here's an astronomical figure that we're asking for the budget. And people say, no, they'll be up in arms and they'll vote against it. And then they'll say, okay, we crunched the numbers. We saved you a lot. If you would have saw that number at first, you still would have been outraged. But because it was less than the original proposal, I was like, okay, thanks for doing that work and getting it down. It's still an astronomical number. But anyway, it's a kind of a tried and true method. So if Republicans, and they do say all of this is the privileges of being a one-party state, of Democrats ruling Albany. If Republicans were truly competitive and even close to a majority in either chamber, Hochul wouldn't have the nerve to make such silly claims. Her maneuver captures how New York is simultaneously addicted to out-of-control spending and dishonesty. The state budget at $237 billion has increased by $100 billion in a decade. But it's never enough. And that doesn't include a slew of independent agencies, such as the MTA, which has a $20 billion budget of its own. As for public safety, Hochul has presided during an era marked by crimes being committed over and over by repeat offenders. Although the progressive legislative leaders and former Governor Andrew Cuomo are largely to blame, Hochul has chosen to meekly surrender rather than waging a public fight. She doesn't have the fight in her like Cuomo did, and that's not Cuomo. It was very detrimental to New York because he was willing to fight, but Hochul's detrimental in her own way for not actually fighting for public safety. The result is the governor's office has been reduced to a little more than a rubber stamp for radical lawmakers. Stores and pharmacies are closing because shoplifting is out of control. And as we've said, businesses, why would you come here to New York State if this shoplifting is out of control, if there's this violence? And look at the Climate Change Superfund. You told these businesses that did exactly what you told them to do when they started, followed all the rules that the DEC left for them. They followed them all, followed the rules, and Hochul said, well, looking back at it, essentially we weren't right, so we're going to fine you $75 billion. If you're a business, are you going to, because what's the new fad of the day that could be taxed 10 years from now? Hochul has to know all of this because she once worked for the late Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. She must remember his warning that, quote, you are entitled to your opinion, but you are not entitled to your own facts. But Hochul seems satisfied to blather on and on with her slate of slogans rather than take the risk of fighting for things that would bring better results. Even on such outrages as the continual marches in the city by anti-Semites waving Hamas flags and calling for the elimination of Israel, she is silent. Where's the leadership? The only reasonable conclusion is that Hochul doesn't have a clue or the backbone required to fix New York, and that she aims to keep the job by trying to fool most of the people all of the time. And that's why it's so important to mention Richie Torres, who is a Democrat. But why do you think he's coming out writing op-eds about public safety and taking public safety serious? He sees an opening there. So she is a very serious threat when it comes to a Democrat primary. Okay, moving on. We got to take a break. Stay with us. We are running really late this morning, but I'm having a blast. Thanks for all the comments. Keep them coming in, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Our beautiful view of historic Market Street, the same location that we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. Yesterday, the House of Representatives passed the Laken-Riley Act. The legislation requires the Department of Homeland Security to take into custody illegal aliens arrested, charged, or convicted for burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting. Seems like kind of a no-brainer. But it did pass with the opposition from Democrats. 159 Democrats opposed the Laken-Riley Act yesterday morning. All present House Republicans voted in favor of the act, which, of course, as you know, but I think it's still very much worth mentioning, is named after the 22-year-old nursing student who was brutally murdered last year in Athens, Georgia, by an illegal alien released into the United States interior. Months before Riley's murder, Jose Antonio Ibarra was issued a citation for shoplifting in Athens and was later issued a bench warrant for failing to appear in court on those charges. Despite the charges, Immigration and Customs Enforcement did not take him into custody. The Laken-Riley Act would require DHS to take into custody illegal aliens arrested, charged, or convicted for burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting. While 48 House Democrats joined with Republicans, and they should be commended for that, in supporting the Laken-Riley Act, 159 Democrats voted against. Let me reiterate that. 149 Democrats voted against the Laken-Riley Act yesterday morning. Representative Mike Collins from Georgia, Republican from Georgia, said, I'm thankful that the House passed the Laken-Riley Act in an overwhelmingly bipartisan manner. No family should have to go through what Laken's has endured. It's now up to the Senate to work together to put this crucial legislation on President Trump's desk. Now, last year, when they were in the position they were in, Senate Democrats twice blocked the Laken-Riley Act from being brought to the Senate floor in hopes of never having to oppose the legislation publicly. What would make you oppose that? What is the justification for opposing that? Is it just because it has anything whatsoever to do with illegal immigration? I don't know. That would be a question. I am assuming they are completely avoiding answering those 159 Democrats that voted against. Voted against. The name, of course, is so important, the Laken-Riley Act, but they literally voted, 159 Democrats voted against requiring the DHS to take into custody illegal aliens arrested, charged, or convicted for burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting. I don't know the justification. Now, Democrat John Fetterman joined with Republicans to sponsor the Laken-Riley Act. We're talking a lot about Senator John Fetterman, Democrat from Pennsylvania. He is the sole Senate Democrat who's co-sponsoring the Laken-Riley Act. After the House passed the Laken-Riley Act with bipartisan support, it says here that following the House passage of the legislation, Senators Ted Budd, Katie Britt, Majority Leader John Thune, and Fetterman reintroduced the Laken-Riley Act in the Senate with support from the entire Republican caucus. Fetterman said, quote, Laken-Riley's story is a tragic reminder of what's at stake when our systems fail to protect people. No family should have to endure the pain of losing a loved one to preventable violence. Katie Britt, who also co-sponsored it, said the American people did not just deliver a mandate on November 5th, they delivered a verdict. Ooh, I like that line. They made it clear that they want to remove criminal illegal aliens and protect American families. We will soon know whether Democrats here respect and obey that verdict. Congress has an obligation to Laken, her family, and to families in every corner of our country to do everything in our power to help prevent this type of tragedy from occurring again. That's why it's imperative we pass the common sense Laken-Riley Act with all due haste. No other American family needs to feel the pain Laken's family still feels 320 days after losing her. So that's a quick update coming through the House. And we'll see where this goes in the Senate. 159 Democrats somehow voting against what seems to be common sense. It almost seems to me, I would think to you too, that maybe that should already have been a law. Now we're going to talk about a couple media updates when we come back. We do have a few things here about Trump, a few things here about the Biden administration, some of the Obama alumni criticizing the Biden administration. We may talk about that. The media updates, very quick, but I think they're important because we've talked about, are they doing soul searching? Are they going to try to be more fair and balanced? I think you know the answer, but we still got to look and see with our own eyes. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We will be right back. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acom. A couple comments from viewers this morning. First one, the illegal man that burned, the illegal alien that burned that woman in New York City said he blacks out from drinking. Where in the heck does he get the money to drink? Send them back, Trump. He was an illegal alien. That is really interesting. I read that because, and you make a good point. Where's he getting all this money to drink? Because it made it sound like it was a regular occurrence. He did say this came out yesterday. But they said he originally, when he got out of work, I can't remember where they said he worked. When he got out of work, he went to a bar and was drinking there. And then I think when they shut that down, they went and got drinks somewhere else and were drinking on the street. And I don't know, I haven't been in a long time, but isn't it a common theme that New York City drinks at a bar specifically are outrageous? So you raise a very good point, one that I hadn't really thought about the cost of that. Now, he did have a job, but boy, bar drinking in New York City's got to cost a fortune. Okay, next comment. Frankly, number one, I knew the high winds would eventually straighten out the roof cam. Nope. That was Chris and Brian, who also sent in a wave this morning. We thank them. It's a beautiful view. So, no, we're not giving the wind credit on this one. We're giving Chris and Brian the credit on that one. It looks great up there at that roof cam. But number two, I'll continue. Number two, why is that right when Trump seems to be on proper trajectory, increasing his overall favorability, he always does something completely off the wall, like the Greenland, Canada, Panama Canal comments, to his detriment. Well, I don't know if this one's to his detriment. I will say there has been times where that happens, where there seems to be, we're going real good, and then something comes up and you go, oh no. But he always seems to overcome them, and they don't always seem to be too much to his detriment. This one is interesting because it has opened the eyes for quite a few people about the importance of Greenland and what happened at the Panama Canal. So this one, I would say there are times that he definitely does that. Okay, so I'm not disagreeing with you on this one. I just don't think this specific case is all that earth-shattering. I don't think it's really as negative as some of the things that we saw in the past. Yes, it gives the media opportunity to cover it and to criticize him, but they're going to do that no matter what he talks about. I do find it interesting, though, that Trump supporters are a little upset about it because they want him to focus on the United States. So to your point there, it might be a detriment to his own supporters. Interesting comment. It makes you think, that one. Thank you. I appreciate it. Comment from a different viewer. Stupid people vote against logical laws after all. The criminals had already entered our country illegally. Yes, that's in the Lake and Riley Act. They voted against the DHS being basically, let me do the exact word. The Department of Homeland Security would take illegal aliens into custody when they are arrested, charged, or convicted for petty crimes like burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting. But because they're in our country illegally, hence the word illegally, should they already be in custody? Yes. So to your point, that was some of the frustration we were talking about earlier, but 159 Democrats voted against that simple act. Next up, comment from a different viewer. Oh, this is from Ken. Hey, Ken. Frank, this is off topic from today's conversation, but I thought it was noteworthy and hadn't heard it before. I just read about another quid pro quo scheme of the Democrats in a Judicial Watch newsletter. Biden's handlers replaced John Kerry with John Podesta as a climate czar in March of 2024. One of the things John Podesta did was to put a moratorium on the overseas sales of U.S. compressed natural gas. Tony Podesta, John's brother, is a lobbyist for foreign compressed natural gas and stands to make a fortune with U.S. CNG off the foreign market. Plus, John Podesta is also now in charge of distributing $370 billion from the quote-unquote Inflation Reduction Act, earmarked for energy and climate issues. Makes you wonder how many family members, friends, and donors associated with Democrats will get richer while American taxpayers get poorer. I would bet Biden will get his share. Thank you, Ken. I was not aware of that. I do get Judicial Watch newsletter, so I just must have missed it. But thank you for that information. A couple updates on the media here. And let me just say, I see a lot of comments coming. We are going to get to those. It's just tough to read them live on the air after our next break. So keep those comments coming in. Jonathan Carl from ABC News. You're probably familiar with him a little bit. He's quoted every once in a while. They say he's gunning for George Stephanopoulos' job after that lawsuit. George Stephanopoulos has a new rival to look out for at ABC. Stephanopoulos' political drama with President-elect Donald Trump has followed him into the new year, and sources tell us, this is the New York Post, that his colleague, Jonathan Carl, wants George gone so that he can sweep in and take over the Sunday morning news show. Now, this coming off the heels of that settlement that is still so ironically beautiful. The settlement where ABC paid President-elect Trump $15 million for that defamation suit. Well, $16 million. $1 million for his lawyers, $15 million for his presidential library, meaning the mainstream media is helping pay for Donald Trump's presidential library. And I've said it numerous times on this program. I hope that there's a brick in one of those places where you can donate and get a brick on the walkway to the presidential library. One of them says George Stephanopoulos. But this is what a source told the New York Post. He wants the show, meaning Jonathan Carl, and he sees ABC's Trump settlement as an opportunity. While Stephanopoulos' name is on the show, he shares hosting duties with Carl and Martha Raddatz. In John's mind, he wants George gone, so it's just him and Martha. Another source quipped, Martha, John wants the show for himself. The bench has been ready to go for years. The attitude has been, when is Stephanopoulos going to step aside? And why are there 3 hosts for a single show? Well, that is a good point. morning show. But a spokesperson for ABC denied Carl has designs on Stephanopoulos' gig, saying it's not true. They have a friendly and mutually respectful relationship. We'll see how that plays out behind the scenes. Also, when we talk about the media, the left-wing Salon likened MAGA to ISIS. And, well, this goes off of Sonny Hoiston on The View, comparing January 6th to the Holocaust and slavery. MAGA and ISIS share roots in, quote, toxic masculinity, according to a recent Salon piece. The Monday essay, titled Toxic Masculinity, links to New Orleans attacker and the Las Vegas bomber. Comparing so-called, talking about the committing mass shootings to Trump fans who attack government buildings and terrorists imbibing ISIS propaganda. Toxic masculinity for radicalizing men struggling with personal issues. Rather than taking responsibility for their personal failures and striving to do better, men of all stripes turn to the internet, where they're greeted by a sea of influencers ready to tell them that it's other people to blame. Women, people of different races or religions, the woke mob that is to blame. So left-wing Salon likening MAGA to ISIS and blames toxic masculinity for recent terrorism. And just going through the media real quick to see if they learned their lesson. One last one. CNN, there's another lawsuit. U.S. Navy veteran Zachary Young accuses CNN of choosing, quote, theater over truth in a desperate attempt to drive ratings, because we know their ratings are down, which ultimately destroyed the life of an American patriot. This is the first day of a high-stakes defamation trial. Young believes CNN, quote, destroyed his reputation in business by branding him an illegal profiteer who exploited desperate Afghans. In August of 2021, as American troops withdrew from Afghanistan under President Biden's orders, the world braced for the Taliban's return to power. Anyone watching the news at that time witnessed a chaotic situation that unfolded as millions of people attempted to flee the war-torn country. This was the opening statement from attorney Kyle Roach. But CNN reporters sitting at their desks in Washington, D.C., wanted to tell Americans an even more sensational story. They had received a tip that Zachary Young, a veteran and CIA-trained operative, was illegally preying on desperate Afghans in a black market operation. But that ultimately proved that he had did nothing wrong. The problem for CNN, it couldn't confirm any of the facts. They are really going after CNN, another defamation suit. We'll keep an eye on that. That was just a quick couple updates on the media before we go to break. Stay with us. We're going to read your comments when we come back. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Left hand on the Bible.
Oh, that's not our theme music. That's Joe Sempolinski getting sworn in. Welcome back to, forgot to click the other button. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. The Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Having a blast this morning. Thank you for all the comments that are coming in. Here's one. A lot of good change, I feel, would happen if term limits on both the House and the Senate. I think there needs to be a serious talk about different forms of term limits. They can't be too small. We've talked with now Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski about that in the past. If they're too short of term limits, it ends up, unfortunately, making the bureaucracy, the bureaucrats, more in charge. And we can have Joe explain that again next time he's on the program. So they do have to be fair amount of years. But yes, this idea of Chuck Schumer being in there his whole life. Remember Harry Reid? I was talking with somebody about this the other day. Harry Reid starting off broke and poor, being in the Senate forever, and then being a mega millionaire. So yes, I do think done properly, it's the easiest way to change the country for the better, change politics in Washington for the better. So I would agree. Continuing, many Democrats are elite millionaires and are insulated from the everyday challenges American citizens endure. I agree. I would also argue that they're not all, but there are some Republicans in that scenario as well, the more rhino, that not like a Trump. Trump has money, but he cares about the American people, cares about helping you. But there are some that have been in Washington forever on both sides of the aisle that are insulated from everyday challenges American citizens endure. And that's why those people need to be primaried. Okay, majority of Americans say Biden's presidency will be remembered as, quote, below average or poor. More than half of Americans believe President Biden will be remembered by history as a poor to below average commander-in-chief. This is coming from Gallup. They found that 37% expect Biden to be regarded as a below average president, while 17% indicated that he'll be remembered as poor. Only 6% of U.S. adults responded that history would remember Biden as an outstanding president, and 13% thought his legacy would be regarded as above average. Another 26% said Biden would go down in history as just an average president. I know some of you are startled that the numbers aren't even worse for him. It's an interesting Gallup poll. So what they found, the best rating, so the only one, because they worded this kind of strange, the only one that they will go down in history as worse, according to this Gallup survey, is Richard Nixon. This is not the typical rankings of presidents, and I'm confused by how Gallup maybe held this poll. Now, we know polls now are not as, I don't know if they ever were, but not as reliable because of it's an antiquated system on how they do it. But this is the ranking according to Gallup. It would start with John F. Kennedy as best, then Ronald Reagan. Now, Reagan's normally at the top of that list, but I'm just reading it. John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, then Barack Obama, then George H.W. Bush. Am I reading this right? And no, that can't be right. And then Jimmy Carter. Well, no, they're doing this very strange. But that's the order that they have. I was going to see if I had a better chart on it because that chart is a little confusing. But what it all boils down to is that Biden is considered the second to worst president, right behind Richard Nixon being the worst. Gallup noted, however, that former presidents Jimmy Carter, George W. Bush, and Trump have seen the harsh ratings they received at the time they left the White House soften considerably. Okay. The Biden administration, this is interesting. I don't know if you've heard this. This was making the rounds late yesterday. I thought it was worth mentioning. The Food and Drug Administration is moving forward with a regulatory rule in the final days of the Biden administration that would effectively ban cigarettes currently on the market in favor of products with lower nicotine levels. So the Biden administration is working to effectively ban cigarettes in the 11th hour. And what the concern about this is, and I think you would know this even if you were not a smoker, you would instantly realize this is going to boost business, for cartels operating on the black market. When taxes go up in New York, you already see illegal cigarettes coming to these bodegas in New York City. It's a major, that's just locally, not locally, but in the city that we hear that. Biden's ban is a gift with a bow and balloons to organized crime cartels with it, whether it's cartels. Sorry, I lost my train because my mic went off. Whether it's cartels, Chinese organized crime, or Russia mafia. It's going to keep America smoking, and it's going to make the streets more violent, said Rich Marinos, former assistant director of the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and current chair of the Tobacco Law Enforcement Network. So the proposed rule, Tobacco Product Standard for Nicotine Levels of Certain Tobacco Products, is displaying in the Office of Management and Budget's ROCIS system as having completed regulatory review on January 3rd. As FDA has previously said, a proposed product standard to establish a maximum nicotine level to reduce the addictiveness of cigarettes and certain other combusted tobacco products, when finalized, is estimated to be among the most impactful population-level actions in the history of U.S. tobacco production regulation. At this time, the FDA cannot provide any further comment until it is published. So Biden on his way out the door, working to effectively ban cigarettes in the 11th hour, what is being deemed a gift to the cartels and to organized crime. One other thing about Biden when we come back, but we got to take a short break. Get your last-minute comments in, your last-minute waves, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Frankly Speaking, Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio, wrapping up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Let's go through some comments here. A lifetime being a politician can become quite lucrative. Yes, absolutely. Nancy Pelosi came into office with $100,000 net worth. In 2024, her net worth was $240 million. Wow, her government paycheck is beer money. Yes, if even that. You're exactly right. Next up, a comment from a different viewer. What? Nixon, a poor president, worse than Biden? The present-day Democrats have been guilty of crimes far worse than Watergate. I thought Nixon was a good president. I think it's really interesting because, you hear Watergate thrown around so much, especially in the media. Woodward and Bernstein are some, like, their idols, because they brought down a sitting Republican president. But Watergate looks like Mayberry stuff compared to recent years, doesn't it? Looks like almost quaint to think about Watergate compared to other crimes from other presidents. Speaking of Biden, Obama alumni trashed Biden as feckless and a stubborn old man because of an op-ed he released. Well, he didn't write it, but on January 6th. If you're too mired in the past, if you become this from the original philosopher, stubborn like an old man, you also become doomed to repeat yourself. That's pretty on the nose. Biden's op-ed didn't say anything. An op-ed about January 6th is the perfect encapsulation of how feckless everything feels in the moment. Our party is one sad op-ed. Democrats perform virtue, explaining over and over again why the insurrection is so terrible. It did not work. This style of politics is not working. Did you see... Oh, hey, last minute waves coming in. Thank you very much. Okay, comment from a different viewer before we go. People need to realize Biden has not been in charge for over 2 years. His handler at the White House ran the show with input from Hunter and Jill. After they had been attending staff meetings with Jill, running only one, so we were told. Yes, I do think Jill played a very important role as kind of tying the strings. Look at all these waves. Pulling all the strings and all the people behind the scenes. That's why people have said it's the end of the Obama era, because that really was Obama's third term in many ways, making those decisions behind the scenes. But I would say not in the last 2 years. Respectfully, I tell you that. I say that because the Wall Street Journal reports that the White House knew the cover-up had to begin on day one, according to sources within the White House. Wow, so many. Here's a comment from a different viewer. Hillary was one of the Watergate lawyers. Where do you think she learned all those dirty tricks? Yeah, that's something that they try to glance over. Anyway. Did you see Senator Elizabeth Warren attacking Pete Hegseth's Christian tattoos as she rails against his anti-woke policies? She's calling him perhaps an insider threat due to the fact that he has Christian tattoos, and seethed over his crusade against woke military policy. She wrote quite a lengthy letter outlining over 70 questions to Hegseth and giving him 4 days to reply. Warren made clear that she sees him as unfit to helm the Pentagon. I'm not going to read all of her quotes, but very, very negative towards these Christian tattoos. One in Latin meaning God wills it, et cetera, et cetera. We can't go through all of them. We are out of time. I can't keep running late. We're out of time. Thank you to everyone who joined us this morning. Thank you for the great discussions and great comments. We will be back every weekday morning starting at 6 for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV Big Fox. We will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. I look forward to it already. Have a great day, everyone.